me do this. Okay, hold on. 1 second. 1 second, chat. I'm doing something. Um,
Tech. It's always everybody's favorite part of streaming and content creation.
there we go. It should be working now, I think, I hope. Oh, wait, let me turn it on first. There we go.
Hey, there we go. All right, let's get this
Okay.
shindig off. All right. I got mute so I don't talk for 20 minutes without the voice going. All right, well, everybody, we're doing another episode of Give Me a Break. Tonight's a doubleheader. First one, we're talking about the importance of lore. It's going to be good stuff. I've got some literary and lore experts for several different fandoms here, several different genres, and I'm excited to get into it. Why don't you start us off, Charlie? Tell us who you are, where to find you, all that good jazz.
Oh, goodness gracious. Hello. I am Charlie. I am primarily a Twitch streamer, but today I am on YouTube. I am Enemy Charlie on YouTube and Twitch. So as far as lore and my expertise goes, I have a Master of Letters in Fantasy Literature. My specialty was in Tolkien studies and ludology. And that is who I am. And thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to talk about this subject.
I'm pretty excited. Fairy Queen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Fairy Queen. You can find me at DaRealFQ on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Please find me on Twitter. I like to shit post there a lot. I'm not a specialty in any particular type of lore. I have my master's in creative writing, and I'm currently pursuing my doctorate in 20th century American literature. With a focus in secondary education. So my area of expertise is really more on like the classics. I'm not going to be able to give you the back lore of Star Wars or Tolkien or anything like that, but I'm very interested. I'm still excited for tonight. And I actually took a class in Old English, like for my foreign language requirement for my degree. So I'm excited to
Ooh.
talk about Old English and its relation to Tolkien and the whole lore
Yeah,
conversation. I find it fascinating.
that
So
is
it should
very
be a fun
relevant.
time.
Gibbs, you're muted.
I know I'm excited for it. Thank you. I always look forward to seeing historical movie adaptations and whatnot that see our lore accurate and whatnot. Let's go to you, Danny. Who are you? What you do? All that good jazz.
Hello, I'm Danny Fortuna, also known as the Pontius on YouTube, also known as the resident Italian meme lord. I have 2 degrees, one in chemistry and the other in biological chemistry. I'm a scientist actively working in a lab. Generally, I am a Warhammer 40,000 lore master, probably one of the highest levels around, seeing recently how much the others actually suck at it, because with a recent series we started watching at others and the results are not good. Other than that, I am also the creator of Warhammer 40,000 Heresy Posting, a Facebook group, the biggest Warhammer 40,000 private Facebook group on Facebook. And, recently we started on YouTube also, and until now it's going well. Just finished, yesterday, editing a new over 1 hour video, so I'm a bit dead, but I feel like I can give my contribution having seen how much the lores have been destroyed of various universes and how much people have been trying to destroy even the lore of Warhammer, to just give how much importance really lore has in a world that is fantasy, sci-fi, or whatever.
I'm really big fans. Big fans of a lot of the Tolkien works. I'm big fans of Warhammer, and I obviously love Star Wars quite a bit. If you couldn't tell from my giant collection of shit behind me. However, I think Star Wars is a prime example of a lore that has been damaged or tarnished quite a bit. And I think this, as opposed to say, Tolkien, which has had some very good adaptations. I think, like the Shadows of Mordor series has been outstanding. They change lore, create new lore, and done good. However, then you have like the Rings of Power, which is debatable, and then we have all the stuff with 40K. So I'm excited to get into it. Danny, why don't you kick us off? You've done a series of videos. One of your first ones was on the importance of lore and how bad retcons and bad changes really can hurt a franchise. What are your initial thoughts on this? If you want to kick us off there, Danny.
My initial thoughts about lore retcons and such is that there is such a thing as good retcons and bad retcons. When retcons happen in Warhammer, the main argument many people I've seen have brought up is that yeah, but retcons have happened in the past. Yes, but there is a difference between retcons that are being made to benefit the product they are attributed to, changes in lore that didn't make any sense. One of the main part of the lore of Warhammer 40,000 that I always cite is the half Eldar, half human Ultramarine that was there in first edition, which by lore for the human faction didn't make any sense whatsoever, because the humans in Warhammer 40,000 are extremely xenophobic. An half human, half alien creature is an abomination they will kill on sight, let alone they will let join the Ultramarines as a living thing. Like, yeah, the most elite transhuman super soldiers of humanity have been joined by an half Eldar hybrid. I think even his own brothers will kill him the moment they found out. But removing that, there have been retcons that have recently happened in Warhammer that have been, to put it simply, shoehorned. Have been changing the lore just for the political motivations that recently seem to have invaded the majority of the fantasy sci-fi sphere and such. The main one I can cite is the female Custodes retcon. For who doesn't know, in Warhammer 40,000, one of the most elite faction was the Adeptus Custodians. The Adeptus Custodians are genetically modified and forcefully evolved transhuman super soldiers, and recently Games Workshop just decided, oh yeah, they have never had women in the last 8 years of their lore. Now they do. And in fact, not only now they do, they always did. Even if in more than 60 books of backstory on the Imperium of Men, none ever appeared. A lot of other Custodes appeared, but no females. And yeah, that is the main example of a politically motivated retcon, because all of this happened around the time where the DEI movement and the woke movements were at their highest. And that is pretty much the difference between a good retcon and a bad retcon, in my opinion, when it comes to correcting a story. An elf hybrid of pretty much a space elf and human would be killed on sight, so the fact he existed wouldn't make any sense. So getting him out of the lore is actually a benefit for the lore. Retconning 80 years of lore, retconning an entire faction to have a sex that technically shouldn't have, and that by the lore of their creation having invalidates their entire existence for politics, because there was no other justification given, is bad for the lore.
Let me go to you, Charlie. Here, I got a great question, right? So you've your background is Tolkien, right? Have you played the Shadows of Mordor games by chance?
I have not actually.
Highly
Uh,
recommended, yeah, but they're very good. But
I
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I
Well,
just I typically I struggle to, like, highly commercialized Tolkien adaptations typically leave like a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah,
It's
so
the
that's where I was
one.
going with this. What do you think about like
Yeah.
the Rings of Power? Do you think that, because I know Danny here is saying that they it's a lot of
Mhm,
the DI wokeness going into 40K, that's a big problem. Would you
mhm.
say that's the problem with the Rings of Power, or do you see other problems? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's the DEI wokeness. I think, obviously I can't speak for what Tolkien would think or want
Sure.
today, but I do think that it doesn't matter if there are people with different skin colors playing characters. I think that, like, specifically, I can't remember. I watched The Rings of Power in 2022, hated it because I thought that the writing was shit and the costuming was hideous. But like the black woman that played a dwarf, I feel like she did a fantastic job, and she looked like a dwarf, you know? Like, she was great. She
Not
was
really.
fun. I thought she was a blast. My issue with The Rings of Power is that the thing about elves, especially in Tolkien's Legendarium, but also let me say something about Tolkien canon specifically. The Silmarillion and all subsequent, kind of backstory things published about, Arda, Middle Earth, etc., were published posthumously by Tolkien's son. And that was Christopher Tolkien gathering essentially what were so many drafts of the same stories and trying to, create like a coherent narrative to put together. So the idea of a Tolkien canon is kind of shaky at best. However, the Rings of Power is based off of the appendices of the at the end of the Return of the King. So my issue with the Rings of Power is primarily, I thought that the writing was ass. I thought that the costumes were ass, but also Galadriel's character. Now, mind you, Galadriel being a more martial character portrayed as such is not out of her like personality or character design. I do believe that her mother name, which is the name her mother gave her, is goodness gracious, I think it's Nerwin, which means man maiden, and she was named this because she was very masculine. She was very athletic. She was in her personality, she was domineering. My issue with the Rings of Power primarily is that rather than to create like a sort of also, by the way, I did not take my ADHD meds today because I'm out. So if I'm very scattered, I'm so fucking sorry.
I'm with you on that. I'm there. I feel you. Go ahead.
Perfect,
So you're fine.
perfect. Is that they had to kind of they had multiple like human men kind of putting her in her place various times over the course of the series, which is crazy because she is so fucking old. And she is considered the wisest and second to Feanor, the greatest of the Noldor. Like she would not be making stupid snap decisions and needing to be chastised by random human men. She should have been as a mentor to them. And in fact, making her like have like a weird like romance with Sauron is crazy to me because she was the only elf that distrusted Sauron and he hated her because of that because she was like, no, there's something weird about you, I don't trust you. And so it's just like it's it frustrates me that they've really just shit on her character and made her so weak and pathetic, and made her more like a wayward stubborn little girl rather than like, I mean, frankly, the wise and graceful but also terrifying badass that she actually is. So I did have a lot of issues with it. I don't think that hiring actors that are people of color was bad, but that was primarily my issue with the Rings of Power.
I will say, sorry if I'm interrupting a bit to make this observation. I will say the answer to like the comparison that is being made is a bit disingenuous and lacking context. Not because of malice. I don't think it is because of malice, but because generally we are not agreeing on the main concept of what lore is.
Yeah.
When I talked about the fact that the changes in Warhammer 40,000 in this case, I'm getting to, like, for the people that complain in chat, I'm getting in a second to Rings of Power because I heard some stuff that it is weird because I saw some pieces of the series. I don't give a fuck about watching all of it because it is very shit in too many places for me to give a fuck about. But generally, my opinion on DEI and wokeness doesn't stop at, oh my god, they hired a black actor to play a character. The point is that when you are doing a switch of that kind, you need to have a justification provided as to why you are doing it. Now, you cited yourself the Black Dwarf woman. Now, I never watched the series. She could have been a great actor for all of that. I don't know. I will not comment on the acting. But you have to understand that by the concept of fantasy dwarves, especially when it comes to Tolkien, they lived in Moria, they lived in mines, they made fortresses inside mountains. The series has to explain, if they want to have a black woman as a dwarf, how in the hell a woman born away from the light that spends all the time in the darkness, in caves, just lit by fires or lanterns or whatever, how did she get the melanin to turn black? Because melanin is not there naturally. Melanin is a response of your body to extreme UV light. It is why all people in Africa have black skin, because it is a response to the body to protect you from UV light. If the woman was born inside a mountain and lived the most of her life inside a mountain, how in the hell is she black? That is the main question you have to ask.
I do have an answer for that. One, Tolkien's dwarves do leave their caves. They do. They travel around. Dwarves travel fairly regularly. But also, so the Inuit people of Canada, despite living in extremely cold conditions that my ancestors, adapted to with less melanin in their skin to absorb more light, the Inuit people, it was never advantageous for them to have less melanin in their skin because by eating seal, they were getting so much vitamin D that it didn't matter. So presumably, with that case, dwarves could have a diet that was actually giving them lots of vitamin D.
Yes,
so
that is
wait a second. That is advantageous. This could be easily retconned in.
Yes,
I think so
I
too.
agree with that. But the problem is, you are providing that answer. It isn't the answer provided from the series. The series didn't provide any answer. Same thing for the black actor they hired to play the elf. Now, he might be the best actor in the world, but if you don't look the part, you don't look the part. It is the same thing that happened.
I would argue
well,
that he
well-
actually looks more like an elf than actually many of the elves that they hired. To
Yeah,
me, elves are meant to
Maybe,
be beautiful.
maybe
Listen,
again,
listen to
again,
me.
but
Listen to
they,
me. Listen to me.
yeah.
Shh. Elves are supposed to look ethereal to the point that when Sam first sees an elf,
And fair-skinned.
he is
Fair-skinned.
shocked. He is shocked by how beautiful they are. Now, the actor that they hired, who was a black man to play an elf, he had high cheekbones and piercing eyes and a very strong jaw. He was ethereal looking. The elves that were white that they hired, many of them looked like a random guy that you would see on the streets of London. So to me,
And
I
again-
don't really care if an elf has dark skin. If they look ethereal
Well,
and they look
Yeah,
beautiful,
no,
I
no,
think
yes,
that's
but
perfectly
let me-
fine.
let
But I
me-
also don't
wait,
think
no,
that you
no,
need to
wait a
justify that
second.
change.
You don't need to justify that change, but the universe needs to justify it. You cannot simply change stuff and make it canon just by the stuff that you changed. Like, you need to give an in-universe explanation for the anomalies you encounter. If something is established as being in one way and you break that way, you better have a good explanation to do that. Even Galadriel that you mentioned, technically removing that, I've seen various reviews from people that were Tolkien experts. Pretty much all of them said the same thing. What the fuck did you write for Galadriel? Galadriel is nothing like this. And even then, even you made a good example about the fact that for how old Galadriel is, she was written to be an extremely entitled baby, because I saw pretty much an entire compilation of her just exploding at people and taking stupid decisions. But when you watch the series, you also notice something else. They wrote her as a female empowerment character, meaning they literally wrote a Mary Sue. And it is the main complaint that you find many people having about Galadriel. From the first episodes, she one-shots the first enemy that she finds. Other elves get killed, she kills him instantly.
Okay,
Even
but
the love story,
Galadriel
even
is
the love story with
actually-
Sauron.
they actually made her less powerful. They made her less powerful in
Yes,
the
they made
show.
her less powerful, but she was never a warrior of this kind. She was never leading men in battle. There is no lore for that.
She has actually led men in battle. She is a martial character. She has participated in fights.
Let me just jump in here because I want to get Fairy Queen in here because I have somewhere I kind of want to take this to see what y'all think. All right, okay, your expertise is if you want to say it again real quick for me, Fairy Queen was the English lit?
Yeah,
As part
it's
of-
mostly just it's 20th century American lit. That's what I focused on. But I'll defer to what Charlie says because this is not fantasy. Tolkien is not my area of expertise.
Well, I have a
but-
specific question for you here.
Okay.
So, so when we're looking at American and English lit, right? If you're looking at more of less of a fantasy or a sci-fi realm, right? When we're talking about, right? However, so, okay, this is maybe not the perfect example since this is going to be Shakespeare, but when I come to think, I don't necessarily have a problem with, say, doing the all-black version of Macbeth that like Denzel did, right? Like because I don't mind seeing Denzel Washington as play fucking Macbeth. That's kind of. Hey, Denzel's pretty fucking cool, right? Like, it's kind of that best actor thing. And there's no in-universe explanation for them being black, except, maybe the whole country's black, right? Because it's Shakespeare. They're not going to go back in time and write this explanation. But I don't have a problem with something like that because it was good. Do you see modern adaptations where they're doing something along the lines, say they took a period piece from antebellum South and they required a certain amount of actors to be a certain minority like they do with the Oscars now? Do you see this as an issue going forward with adaptions for American lit novels and movies and all sorts of things like that, Fairy Queen?
So I'm gonna give like kind of a half yes and no answer. So there's a theory in literature. There's a book that was written by Harold Bloom, who was a literary scholar like from Yale, and he wrote it in about 1973. It's called The Anxiety of Influence. The Anxiety of Influence is a theory of literature that basically says that all poets, all writers, all authors are struggle, under the influence of everyone that came before them, all of the writers that inspired them. So Shakespeare, Thoreau, Emerson, Tolkien, all of these different great authors. And so because of this, you as the writer, you having the anxiety of influence. And what happened, Bloom argues that basically you misinterpret, your great work comes from a misreading or an accidental misinterpretation of a work that you've already read, and then that creates something entirely new. And so I think that, like, to say, you know, that you're bound, and so to, I don't know, to an old canon or to an old like story structure, it inhibits people's ability to create new work, and which is a concern I think that I have with the lore, because I agree with the importance of lore, but I also disagree kind of a little bit with it too. The short answer of what I'll just make it really quick here. I think the reason why we're talking about lore and why so many people are constantly worried about their stories being ruined, about Star Wars or Star Trek or Lord of the Rings, whatever series what you will have like being changed, what that reveals is a lack of original stories being produced. And I think the reason like why there is a lack of original stories being produced that people like is that we are in a weird literary period where original work that is of this period is so alien to the average consumer, it's not something that's easily connected to. And we can like go through that like in more detail, but that's like the short answer.
No, yeah, actually, why don't you expound upon that some? I'm a little interested in that.
Well, so if you guys remember, like back in high school, you remember learning about transcendentalism and colonial, the Harlem Renaissance, right? You remember all of these different literary periods that we flipped through. And one thing that you'll, for those of you who like went to college and like you like took like modernism, and like you'll know that like as literature in the United States progresses through time, it becomes more and more abstract. It becomes weirder, right? You had modernism from 1914 to 1945, you know, you then, and that had Faulkner, that had Ernest Hemingway, you had the hard-boiled, you know, prose that was like almost read like it was very, very different from the Victorian long sloping hills of Testa Ubervilles. You then, you know, it changed, you know, it was very hard-boiled. It read like a movie script. It felt very cinematic when you picked it up and read through the book. And then that changed to postmodernism. And you had a lot of books that really tried to explode the novel into something entirely new. You had huge books like Gravity's Rainbow. You had White Noise by Don DeLillo. You had Slaughterhouse-Five. You had Toni Morrison's Beloved. You had all of these different books that were really trying to play with the form of the novel, right? And these books were often famously difficult to read, and they were often highly abstract, and they were weird, to put it bluntly. So Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace is a really good example of this. That is over 1,000 pages, and it is almost entirely written in footnotes, okay? You like basically you'll be reading the book, there will be a footnote, and then you'll have to flip all the way to the back of the book and you'll have to read like the footnote to explain it, and then you're constantly flipping back and forth throughout the book. And so these books, although they are new and they are unique pieces of literature, they are not very user-friendly, okay? It is not the same. Picking up like David Foster Wallace's like Infinite Jest, that is not the same experience as picking up Ernest Hemingway's, you know, For Whom the Bell Tolls, or even like picking up like a book from Dickens. Like any of these books from like realist eras, from the Transcendental era, or even from the modernist period, they are more concrete, to put it bluntly, right? The prose is easier to read. The characters are more tangible. The themes are more explicit. It's not as difficult of a read to pick up these books and to understand them as it is to read more contemporary literary work. And so when you're thinking about like new stories that are being produced and new ideas, it feels to me that people are responding to, you know, the progress that we are experiencing in society. It's too weird I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's just too abstract. It's too out there. It's not concrete enough for people to hang on to. Have you ever been to an Apple store? Like, I remember like 10 years ago, you would walk in there and it looked like the inside of the Millennium Falcon, right? Everything was metal. Everything was glassy. Everything was minimalistic. You go in there now, there are wood panels everywhere. You have screens, but you have flowers blooming out of the screens. They've deliberately tried to make the Apple store look more homey because I don't know if I'm really communicating this well or not, but I think but basically, like, I think what I'm trying to say is that, like, because of the fact that, like, our world is becoming increasingly more abstract, our literary period that we're in is really too weird for the average consumer to engage in, people are repeating and rehashing and retelling the same stories that we came up with 20 or 30 years ago over and over and over and over again. We have, instead of like
Well-
coming up with a new fantasy series, we have the Rings
Well,
of Power. Instead of having like a new like Star Trek or Star Wars inspired third thing, you have rehash things going over and over and over again. And
Let's look at that a little bit, and then I see Charlie, I see your hand. I'll go to you next.
Mhm.
I want to give one example that I think is maybe the retelling where it's done well, where they adapt lore and change it. Right? Is I think the American Gods novel is very dated. Like some of the stuff that they have go down is just the tech is totally different than what I guess he thought was going down or whatever. And then you have the modern American Gods, which I ran for 3 series and I think is some fantastic television, right? And they're very interesting. Like they make Vulcan, like basically he's basically like an arms manufacturer, and and he's a bad guy in the novel. He's a bad guy in the TV show as opposed to what he was doing in the book. And I think that worked really well. It was a very great commentary on like the antebellum South. It's great commentary on like sundown towns. It's very interesting, contrasted with like Boar, which is like Thor, which is Odin's darker skinned son, and it was very interesting, right? And then you have some stuff like kind of like what I guess we've been alluding to with the Rings of Power, where it seems like whether or not you agree with it, there seems to be like some serious flaws with it, or like with Star Wars, where I think maybe they didn't change lore, but they added new lore, or they've redone old lore and done it poorly. Like whenever they dropped the Rise of Skywalker, right? I hate it. And I'll tell you why. Is because the reason everybody bitched about the EU, one of the big ones was the Dark Empire series, and then they basically just did a way watered down version of Dark Empire to end the Skywalker trilogy. Whatever 9 films it's called. But like, yeah, I just like I'm sitting here looking at it, and I'm just like, this is very poorly done. Y'all said the reason we were going to new canon is because y'all wanted to be not tied down to these old stories that are just not working, yada yada. And then when you adapt it, you just do a watered down version of this instead. It doesn't make much sense to me. But Charlie, what are your thoughts? I saw your hand up there, and then we'll go to you, Danny.
I would say that as far as like I don't know if this term would apply to film, but like sort of the post-structuralist style, which is very scattered and unusual. I feel like we've seen films that I would consider to be post-structuralist do well. Specifically, I think the film Everything Everywhere All at Once and Nope.
Yep.
I do feel like deal with I think that they managed to kind of convey things that I would I would categorize as belonging to the realm of the weird, capital W, fairly
Yeah.
well through the medium of film. Though of course that's going to be different. Like I do think it's so much more difficult to adapt post-structuralist literature and weird literature into a visual medium of any kind.
Mhm.
But I was thinking specifically of I feel like the rehashing of old series is not just that. Because I agree with you, it is more difficult. It's also riskier to go with anything new. They want to kind of I feel that we are sort of kind of being like endlessly farmed for our nostalgia. They see something
Yeah.
that works and they go, okay, let's keep doing this shit until the end of time, essentially, which is super, super duper fucking annoying. Which is, again, why we see the same shit forever and ever and ever. And I feel like people really need to take some chances, like on especially new books, new novels, and try to make things that might be hard to make, that might not land with commercial audiences. But again, production companies don't want that. They want, Lord of the Rings 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, until we're all nostalgia'd out. They wanna milk the cow dry, which is so obnoxious.
Well, I know with
Yeah.
Star Wars, for example, they have like some outstanding, like, I mean, I guess it's a little different because it's a visual media, right, than what you're saying. But like with Star Wars, for example, there are some outstanding like works, and some of the best Star Wars ever has been in the new stuff. Like the Bill Burr scene in Mandalorian in season 2 is amazing, right? Like Andor, some of the best television I've ever fucking watched, right? And then I see, something like Book of Boba Fett, or I see, my favorite character. The reason I have the word Admiral in my name, by the way, not stolen now, it's because of Thrawn. I have Admiral in the name, right? Like he is I mean, they have some hints that do something cool. We could have like an unhinged version, in a new thing, which is new canon. But instead, it just seems very watered down. And speaking of 40K, I know I'm a fan of 40K, massive fan, and I like Henry Cavill a lot. But I'm very worried that they're going to budgetary constraints, or there's going to be Amazon stepping in. They did one good adaptation with Fallout, but I'm very worried that it's going to be watered down or not the standards. Is this something that you're worried about, Danny?
I have pretty much zero hope that the project for a live-action
Zero
40K
hope.
series will come out good. Not because of Henry Cavill, but mainly for the inclusion of Amazon. One thing Amazon doesn't allow is internal interpretation of the universe. They want the external interpretation. So good luck even including a scene of a human being racist to an alien into the series, for where humans kill aliens just as fun by this point in 40K. Other than that, yeah, making it a live action is a very bad idea, especially if you want to involve space marines or any kind of mythological creature from 40K at this point, orcs, Eldar. You will have to go half live action, half CGI, or shitty costumes. At that point, go full CGI. Give us a Astartes 2 instead of a series.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to respond to something that Charlie said. Charlie, I would agree with you that like there are examples of post-structuralist or meta-modern stories that do very well. Like Everything Everywhere All at Once is a great example of that. And I think that the reason why that movie in particular did well is because it addresses something that you see in postmodern and arguably like even modernist examples of fiction, which is, it tries to answer the question of irony, like postmodernism's, it answers postmodernism's declaration, everything is meaningless. And then metamodernism responds with everything is meaningless, so therefore everything means everything. Like it makes life is so much more meaningful because we know that this is all you get. This is all that's here. It's everything on a bagel, you have the black pit in the middle of the bagel. Everything is being sucked into it's that, right? And I think though that I think it's and you mentioned like being farmed for your nostalgia. And I really like that phrase. I think that's definitely true. And I think the reason for it is that there's only so far you can push irony. I've talked to a friend, like he talked about like having a sort of post-ironic sense of humor, which is where, for those of you like watching in the audience, that's where, you act as though you're saying something real, but really you're being ironic. It's the point of it is that it's so realistic that you can't tell if the person is being funny or sarcastic or if they're being serious. But what comes after that? What comes after post-irony? What's the post-irony? It feels like a self-eating snake. There's only so many sarcastic, self-effacing pieces of irony really that we can follow before we do need something more serious and grounded to hang on to. Not because, we embrace, the narrative as being, we know that the narrative is a construct. We know that like it is a narrative, like God is dead, okay? But the question is like, what comes after that? Okay, so like now what? We have to figure out what to do now. And I think that it's this nostalgia. I think that's the reason, part of the reason, like why this particular period is being so foreign for nostalgia. People want something that's sincere. People don't just want. The Seinfeld era is over, right? Like, there's a reason, like, why The Office couldn't just be bleak, over and over and over again, right?
Well, I kind of maybe want to push back a little bit about this idea that there is no originality, right? And I'm going to come back to the Star Wars thing again because, like, okay, the biggest issue, right, that people brought up in some of the, like, okay, I can see The Force Awakens drops, everybody's excited, you give them a healthy dose of nostalgia, you go back to practical effects, that's good, and like, I don't have a problem with The Force Awakens movie. It's a retelling of A New Hope, okay? Cool for a new generation. That's fine. It brings people back, right? But then we like kind of get further down, and sometimes when people try something new, it's an abject failure, right? Like Ruin Johnson, as I like to call him, comes in and he just ruins Star Wars. The guy literally comes in, he goes, "Fuck lore." He says, "Fuck your fan theories," and then he does some shit that's just lore breaking, like this hyperspace ram. Oh, we don't need to go into things; it's all lore breaking, but he breaks a lot of lore, and fucks up a lot of shit. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then you get what happens in the third movie, or the mainline trilogy, which is what is it, Rise of Skywalker. And like I said earlier, that's just dribble. It just fucking, it's the old Dark Empire trilogy. And so then we go, okay. Well, we're farming for nostalgia. Mandalorian kind of did that, but it brought people back. However, what are the things that people talk about being like really good from this era, right? And I think there's examples of this idea that we've grown up with Star Wars, right? People in my generation are now in their 30s, right? I grew up seeing the 20-year anniversary on film. I grew up. Episode 1 was when I was like 5th or 6th grade, right? And so what are we looking for now? Okay, well now we're in this dark era. Okay, and we're in this time where there's a lot of turmoil. So, okay, what is the in the 80s when he did the Ewoks, right? That's the Vietnam. Like he talks about the Vietnamese inspired that. Here, okay, that was kind of new. Well, what's new now? Well, now we have Andor come out, and it's a commentary on maybe Trump's America or migrant problems in other countries or here. You have these great speeches from these characters. They're like, oh, we're looming over, and this is all what I'd call like new. It's very dark. You have some of the best episodes in some of the other series. Like the Bill Burr speech is very dark. You have this like evil Nazi-esque guy giving like a realistic speech, like, "Hey, well, if we're gonna win against this people, we're gonna have to cause enough chaos. They welcome us back." And you see the other guy just coming to the realization that the organization I worked for so long is just evil. And this is all very like new to Star Wars. You don't ever see this perspective until like now. And so I think there is new art being created, and there's this fine line. You have people that are willing to study and love the lore, like kind of like what the Pontius over here is saying is they've looked at the lore. They are like, how would this work in canon? Okay, we're gonna look. All right, so why is this guy shooting this guy? Well, he's doing this because he was a trooper on this planet, and the guy killed 10,000 people that were on his side, not just the civilians. And now he's disillusioned with this, and he's finally sitting there. He's been like roaming around the galaxy, whatever. And I have the chance to get the guy in front of me that is the cause of my entire. Like this is like, oh, okay, continuity, canon, good. Then you have something like the hyperspace ram, which doesn't make sense because I could just get like a rock, put a hyperspace engine on it, and end 3 of the Star Wars movies that way. Like that, if that was a thing they could do, why didn't they just do that? Right? It's like dumb. And I think there's this like fine line when people do shit just to do it, and I think that's important here. And I think that we're kind of maybe missing that a little bit with the idea that there is no new. It's like when you rehash, adding a new in the proper way, I think is a big problem.
Now, generally, I want to push back on a lot that has
Sure.
been said, because yes, I can understand that the new concepts are a little bit more abstract, new stuff becomes harder to comprehend, but I do find that this spits a bit on the intelligence of the viewer, or in a way. Like, if you're reading something, if you're watching something, it is not on me to have to understand what you are saying. It is on you making me understand what you are saying. There is the concept that I don't see here nominated or even mentioned, that maybe some ideas don't work, some retcons don't work, some new stuff doesn't work, simply because it sucks. Because it is not good. It is not a matter of what they changed. It's why. It is not a matter of how people can understand it. It's how good it is. Recently, for the new video that will come out in a few days on my channel, I had to go and reread the Heisenberg Omnibus, a Warhammer 40k book that is considered legendary by many. I had read the separate stories many years ago, but I reread it for the video because I had explanations to give about a lot of stuff, about a specific character, and I found a short story, which is Missing in Action, that I had never read by Dan Abnett, that was included because technically it was a short story having as a character Eisenhorn, Inquisitor Eisenhorn, which is the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
This short story has become probably my favorite short story in 40k. Missing in Action is one of the best pieces of literature to show the trauma of war inside the universe of 40k. Pretty much the entire story is Inquisitor Eisenhorn is on a planet, is in a very shitty Hive city. Even he comments that he would have left if he could. She's contacted by the planetary governor. The planetary governor is concerned about a series of homicides that have happened because they have been pretty brutal. Hands removed, heart removed, eyes torn away, and like some of these victims were years old. They were just being found. They pretty much start investigating the story, get attacked a couple of times until they find a connection. These attacks were happening all connected to people that were part of a military regiment that had returned from a war against another species, 11 years before. They go to the pretty much to the old barracks of these regiments. They were completely destroyed by that point. They find pretty much about 20 people, all the survivors of that regiment, completely riddled with PTSD. They were killing people because they had been shown that complete and utter paranoia was the only way to survive on a battlefield of 40k, both from allies and enemies, because you never know when somebody could turn. They were killing people they suspected of being heretics waiting to attack the planet, kill other people. And while they were there, you get a glimpse into how much damage they are from the war they fought. There was one that was not even capable of understanding where he was. The first thing he asked when Iceron approached was if they would be given medals for their own sacrifices. And when pretty much another one called him, "No, idiot, we are not getting medals, they are here to kill us," the guy just went, took out his weapon and started shooting. That short story is one of the best pieces of literature I've read in the last years. It is from the early 2000s. But it is so grounded in reality, so real to what is the reality of the lore of 40k. Because what I think is missing recently, even with with some stuff you mentioned, Gibbs, the fact that there is stuff parading Trump's America, there is stuff making fun of other things. Yes, but you have to understand something. Too much parody kills your art. You cannot make something just to parody all the time something else. One of the main things I said when I made my video, The Importance of Lore, is a good writer can bend the rules. A shitty writer changes them. If you cannot rely on a reality of your own world to be consistent and then explain the exceptions, because attention, when there was the mention, for example, of
Well, Dan, can I ask you a question? Let me ask you a question. Just with it, because I just reread all that series recently, and just maybe ask you. So you did just say this, so maybe this is kind of like fall into that. I mean, that series retcons the Tyranids back like several hundred years.
No. Actually,
I know that technically there's other ones and whatnot, but like when that first came out, that was really controversial, and now there's quite a bit stuff saying that's not it falls in line. I know you probably want to push back on that, but like, would you argue that at the time that would be bending the rules, but compared to like
No, at the time that was a mistake. Then Abnet acknowledged it was a mistake. It will be in the video. You can see he pretty much acknowledged, yeah, I fucked up, because it is true. On a lore level, he fucked up. It was several centuries off from the events he was mentioning. And generally, what I'm trying to say is, you can make changes to the stuff you want to change, but those changes need to have an explanation. They may even be a gateway to something greater. Like one of my main pieces generally of one second, let me finish this concept, then you can speak freely. Like generally, when it comes to rules being had in a universe, too much rules kills your creativity. Too little rules gives you too much freedom. You cannot not explain why you are changing something. It needs a reason, and a very good one, grounded in the reality of the universe, not ours. Because why the fuck would, for example, generally when you go into Mordor, just like even the depiction they gave in the Rings of Power about the orcs being like refugees that were looking for a new home. When even he talked about this, when Tolkien wrote the orcs, he wrote them to be the perception of evil. They were simply evil. There was no redeeming qualities about them.
Let me push back on that a little bit. So Tolkien actually struggled with his depiction of orcs until till like the end of his life, because he felt that he struggled as a Catholic. He felt that it was not moral for him to write beings that could be perceived as innately evil. And there is actually a scene, I can't remember if it's the Two Towers or the Return of the Kings, where you hear two orcs actually speaking together and discussing how they want to not be, the thralls of Sauron or Saruman. They want lands of their own. They want to live in more peace than they currently are living in. And so I feel that a good adaptation is something that takes the original ideas and ideals of the original work and takes them further. So the only good thing that I feel that the Rings of Power did, I don't think that they did it well, but the portraying orcs as more complex, not just like these avatars of of pure evil because they were never meant to be.
I,
Again, Tolkien
I
does
think
not
Peter
believe
Jackson does that too.
Tolkien does not
He,
believe in innate true evil. It's only corruption. Things can
well,
be corrupted. They're not, no one is born evil. Nothing is made evil. It is said multiple times throughout the novels that nothing is born evil. It is
well,
corrupted. And so
I,
again,
Yes, but no. Wait a second. Then let me ask you a question.
okay.
Then it is better in this case what they did, which is all the orcs are misunderstood people that are doing just what they need to survive. When by just seeing the movies and even reading the books, they have done some fucking heinous stuff.
So
Or
I don't think that you didn't watch The Rings of Power, did you?
no.
So
But
the
no,
orcs,
but
the
like,
orcs do practice, like, they're not portrayed as like misunderstood. It's just that they're more complex. Yes, they do evil.
I mean, I saw the
but they're
scene
not
about
just
the little
hordes
orc
of
child,
evil.
the little orc family, but
Okay, they do
but-
slavery. They
how
they
about,
are enslaving
yes,
elves.
yes, no,
So
no,
yes,
they're
okay,
not
okay,
they're
okay.
not just misunderstood.
Wait a second,
They
wait a
do
second.
bad
One second,
things. Like you,
Hold on,
you
No, wait a
haven't
second.
seen
No,
it,
let me
so-
complete. Let me complete my question. But my question is: would it have been better how they have done it, which is all of them are now misunderstood, or would it have been better just having one or two that were different, and
Well,
then going into their story that would have made it more
do you
interesting
object
instead
to
of all
Peter
of them?
Jackson's like portrayal of the orcs, Danny? Do you have a problem with how Peter Jackson did? Because Peter Jackson also made.
No, I didn't. In fact, I agree with what Peter Jackson did.
So
I
he
don't
made
agree
them.
with what they did in
Well,
Rings of
so
Power.
the orcs of Peter Jackson's aren't actually evil either. If you actually start diving into what they say, right? Like like if you listen to like what's one of the most evil orcs, right? Is the pink orc, right? He spits on the dude. He like steps out of the thing out in the third one, Return of the King. And what does he say? He says like, "Oh, the time the man is over. The time of the orc is now." And I look at like the Twin Towers, and what is it representing? What is Mordor representing? It's like coming of industry, the ending of magic, the ending of the old world, the coming of the new, the fear of the unknown. But if you look at it, even in Peter Jackson's version, you have the orcs, and they're clearly, if you were in this society, then like what they're doing is not evil. Now, it could be perceived as evil from your society, but from what their society is, they've been this oppressed group because they are oppressed. They're like forced to live in Mordor. They're living underground in caves and like random places. When they take something, they have to take it from somebody else and live off the scraps.
The question
because
is
they're not
why.
accepted.
The question is why.
Well, because of the first wars and the second wars, I'm assuming. But like, if we really dive into history, I'm sure Charlie. But even then, they're still not evil. They're just more
I can explain why. It is because of their initial corruption by Morgoth. They aren't trusted by
So there is a
elves-
reason they do
elves
live in
and
there. It is
other
not just
species.
random.
However, I would like to say again that they were not all orcs were portrayed as misunderstood. It's just that the Rings of Power did make it clear that it was nurture and not nature that made orcs the way that they were, which is
that is good to
important.
know because
Again,
I will never watch
I think
it.
that it is important because that is also Tolkien's, belief around evil, and that is what is emphasized throughout the Lord of the Rings. It is, no one is born evil. It is corruption.
Okay, good. But again, this brings into a bigger other problem, which is, in my opinion, at least recently, movie makers, book writers, and such try to focus too much on cultural relativism inside their own creations. They don't. Let's just say they don't go with silk gloves to explain and like give a little bit of themes inside their stories. They go more with a sledgehammer to beat you over the head with it. One of the main problems, for example, I cite 40k now because it is my main expertise. In Warhammer 40,000, there is the belief that many people have about humans that not only humans are not the good guys of the entire universe, but that nobody in the universe is the good guys. That is not only something I challenged in one of my videos talking about how the humans are in fact the good guys of 40k, but I pretty much went into the story of all other major races, why the wars started, the events that happened, and pretty much explained in detail why humans became what they are. And pretty much there is a distinction to make between seeing something from the outside in and seeing something from the inside, from the perspective of the characters. One of the main comparisons I gave in that video was the existence of a faction, of a sub-faction in this case, inside another faction of the Inquisition called the monodominant faction. They are very powerful people of the Puritan ideology of the Inquisition that believe that only humans should walk the stars. If there is aliens, they must be exterminated. They must be killed with prejudice, without leaving any alive. They believe that with all their being, in fact, they're considered extremists even by the eyes of the Inquisition. But again, one of the comparisons I gave for everyone watching the video was, now, with everything I told you about humans trying to be friendly, being attacked by aliens, being almost exterminated, being brought into wars they didn't want, being treated as cattle, slaves, and such, after all of this, because there were people obviously that were saying, oh yeah, well, humanity in 40k, the Inquisition especially, it's a parody, it's satire. If you justify a way you are treating someone inside a story, is it satire anymore? That is the main question I'm asking, because many people obviously look from the outside and go, oh yeah, but the orcs are more complex, they should be treated with more complexity. And on that, I agree. I don't like just plain characters. For me, plain evil is boring. I want to have a little bit some more insight in it. But looking from the outside in, the humans in 40k are as bad as everyone else. Then once you look from the outside, from inside, you see they have no other choice.
Well,
At that point, what is the correct interpretation?
So, Danny, I mean, I this is kind of where I was coming back to. I mentioned Andor, and I think maybe you slightly misunderstood what I was saying, unless you've seen it, was the parody movie in real life, right? And I think that this is actually a good example of what you said. It's the in-universe perspective, right? So, what was really good, one of the scenes in Andor that I think is going to be it's going to become an iconic piece of cinema in general is the Gorman massacre, right? And part of what makes it so shocking is the sanitization of it, right? Because it's Star Wars, there's not blood; they use laser weapons, but not seeing the blood and seeing that was a very striking visual that I think people aren't going to forget. And then the main character, the character that orders the massacre, goes and begins to puke right afterwards, right? And she's puking and she's having a mental breakdown. Her lover has just been killed in this thing. And it's a very real moment based on whatever. And then another scene, they have in universe a character's tortured and she kills her torturer, right? And the way that right before she kills him, he's like, oh, it was just for science, right? It was very reminiscent of a Mengenal or whatever, right? Like the Doctor Death from I can't even say his name right now, but yeah, from the Auschwitz or whatever, right?
Like the
It's very
Nuremberg trials?
well, Dr. Mengele, the guy that was
Oh, I know
showing
Dr.
twins together.
Mengele, but the
Yeah,
justification, I was just following
yeah, it was.
orders.
It's very clinical, clinical, and you
Mhm.
have this contradiction between the ISB agent who's the SS right equivalent, and she's throwing up, and then you have, and this is usually a tough, brutal individual because of everything that's happening, and then you have the contrast to the actual officer that goes and carries out the order, and he's calm, collected, doesn't even have a problem, doesn't bat an eye, clearly damaged, and is the typical evil character, but he you could tell he's a clinical soldier. And then one more contrast with that is you have the grunts, it's a bunch of grunts going in that don't know, they're all brand new, and you have this experienced sergeant leading them, and he sees what's happening and how they're being used, and the realization, and right before he dies, and you have all these constricting viewpoints, contradicting viewpoints, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a piece of artwork. This is very good, right? It's used within the universe, the sanitization, no weapons, all these different things. It's exactly what you just talked about, and I think that's very good. And then you have something which is the not respecting of the lore, which is the Ryan Johnson stuff, and that I have a very big problem with. And I think you've kind of alluded to this. There's no reason in there, and so it's I get afraid when we argue we can't have new adaptations and stuff or add new lore, because I don't necessarily mind new lore if it's well written, but I do have a problem when it's something along these lines. What do you have to say something like that, Danny? Because you seem to be the one.
I will make you I will make you simply an example. What do you think of the line "somehow Palpatine returned"?
Oh yeah, I fucking hate that shit. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, the main point.
Well, that's exactly what I'm bitching about, though, right there.
No, the main point when it comes to lore is that lore exists not only to give the basis of your universe. You are establishing rules. You are establishing how stuff works inside your own literary universe. Changing that is very risky. It must be done as sparingly as possible. In the best case scenario, never. You need to program the stuff you want to do so long before you even do it that you need pretty much to not retcon anything. Now, that is impossible because it will need years and years of preparation, but yeah, it will be the best case scenario. Lore by itself is not only a set of rules that limits people, but that establishes pretty much the suspension of disbelief in your own world. Just using the example of Palpatine. Palpatine was dead. It was renowned he was dead. He never came back. There was not even the illusion he could have come back. And then out of nowhere, somehow, because there is no explanation given, because who gives a fuck, Palpatine returned. This is the perfect example I wanted to give about the distinction between good retcon and bad retcon. A good retcon is explained, a good retcon is an exception, a good retcon is at least tried to make like compliant with the rest of the rules of the world, so to not shatter the suspension of disbelief of the reader, the viewer, or whatever. They have to believe that what is happening is possible inside your universe. If you just do it because you can, nobody will give a fuck about your universe very easily.
Fair Queen. I was going to Fair Queen, then go to you, Charlie. What do you got, Fair Queen? What you got for me?
Charlie can go first. She probably has like something more specific to like what Danny was saying.
So I would say
Oh, nice.
actually that the thing about our own world is that we actually don't know everything about our world. There are many mysteries that remain in our world. As far as science and the laws of how our world and our universe functions, we're learning new things all the time. I feel that good world building leaves a bit of mystery and also, you know, leaves things open to change. And I think it is in many ways easy to justify changes most of the time.
I will
and
say
agree.
you're a bit misconstructing my answer by saying.
Yeah, let her finish there real quick. Go ahead.
She can finish, but it isn't what I said. What I said is not a universe must be all 100% explained all 100% of the time. There must be
We're talking
mystery.
about
But
the
in my
rules,
opinion,
the rules of the world. Again, I do feel that it's appropriate.
they can be
sometimes
bent,
for
but they
those-
cannot be
those
broken.
to-
The suspension of disbelief relies on it. You don't have a universe, you don't have a continuity. If your characters can just change the world they live in, you cannot simply do that. Like, in general, even the female custodies problem that in the 40k universe was a gigantic problem. Everyone was angry at it. For the simple fact that we had 8 years saying they didn't exist. Then Games Workshop one morning woke up and went, no, not only now they exist, they always existed. There was no mention, there was no artwork, there was no books, there was no lore to support it, there was
Well,
nothing.
I think also,
and they
Danny,
went, they exist now.
This is going to be a different conversation because, I mean, I guess Tolkien is now kind of being turned into a franchise, but what you're talking about is something that was created to make money, to generate as much money as possible.
It lost them money, that's
So,
for sure.
like when you
Well, wait, you don't think
with
Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings to make money?
no, that was Love of the Game.
Really? Do you
Yeah.
think so?
He was a
okay.
professor. He was a linguistics professor. He had the money that he needed. He was fine. He wrote it because he
Testy
loved
Johnson,
it.
you can suck my dick from your chat, Gibbs.
Just don't worry
that
about
was really
testing. He's
gross,
trolling.
No, it's just an idiot in the chat, don't worry.
Okay. Anyway,
Just ignore the idiots. Focus on the panel. Sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
Gotcha. So when you're dealing with a game franchise or a model franchise, like you're kind of trapped with the fact that like changes are going to be deeply like, listen, I'm a World of Warcraft player. I played World of Warcraft from 2005 to 2020. The lore has changed 10 million times over, specifically because they want to make more shit so that people will buy more shit. And so that's kind of what you're working with, Danny, where with the game,
not really in
you're
this
never
case.
you're never really going to have what you want because
Do you
they're
know how
always
many
going
books
to change.
Warhammer 40k has? How many? Just a rough number.
I have no idea. I've never done anything.
It has
with
over
40K.
600 books. I wouldn't say the problem is only the miniatures. Warhammer 40,000 is as much as a literary universe as it is a model universe. The problem is that even if we agree that it was a change made to make money, it didn't make any money. There was no money, there was no models released, there was nothing. If anything, it angered the community so much. The Custodes faction became the least selling of all of them. For the simple fact that, to put it simply, people are tired of retcons that don't have any grounding inside the universe. Now, we can agree all the time we want about universes being able to change, stuff being able to be added, removed, and such. I do not disagree with that. The problem is that it must be done always within the limitations of your universe. One example I used even in my video about the importance of lore.
Why would I, like, what I'm failing to understand here is that you're acting like women being added to a faction is like,
it is a problem when it is the
like
custodians.
undoes the world.
Well, yeah,
No,
let
no,
me.
no, 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 no,
I'm
no,
gonna
no, no,
try to
wait,
Like
wait,
get
wait,
you
it,
back
like
wait,
it
in.
wait, wait, no, no,
destroys
no,
the
no,
like
wait,
this
wait,
Well,
Gibbs. No, no,
game
wait,
breaking.
wait, Gibbs, because I studied this for a long time to make my videos on it. It
sure.
doesn't destroy it doesn't destroy the universe, but it destroys the faction of the Adeptus Custodians. To give you some context of how this faction work, this faction is a faction of the most elite superhuman soldiers of the Imperium of Men. They are chosen when they are toddlers, maximum 2 or 3 years old. They are genetically augmented, technically more genetically reconstructed, with a process that only the Emperor knew how to perfect. In fact, creating them now is a problem because he's a corpse on a throne. He cannot create them personally anymore. They were his personal guard. They were always taken from the noble families of the planet Earth, or how they call it in 40k Terra. They were always taken from the sons of those noble families. Pretty much they were superhuman modified hostages from the noble families so that the Emperor could achieve compliance of the noble families. So that pretty much we have your sons, don't do anything because we will come for you. And all of this pretty much creates a superhuman faction that is made by extremely strong and extremely specifically genetically gifted individuals that takes from a very shallow and very limited pool of recruitment, and that has done that for over 10,000 years. The most genetically pure nobles of the planet are used to make custodians. If they started using women from those noble families, the custodians would have been extinct in 500 years. There aren't that many nobles that can be used to create custodians. So the simple fact that they even had the stupid as fuck idea, if you ask me, to use women when women are your main source of recruits because they need to make sons. The noble families need to go forward. Their sons are your custodians. The fact that they were using women is dumb outside of the universe because you should see that they shouldn't exist anymore at this point. And from the inside, the custodians are all extremely intelligent individuals. They are monsters when it comes to intelligence. They are all extremely intelligent. You think they wouldn't see that taking women from your own recruitment pool would kill you in the long run? That's why everyone has a problem with it. And even then, in Warhammer 40,000, this is a bit of unrelated, but it should show some context. In Warhammer 40,000, every faction is mixed, apart from 4. Those 4 factions, before the retcon of the Adeptus Custodians, and now it is 3, only 3 that are like only exclusive, were the Adeptus Custodes, that were only male, the Adeptus Astartes, another kind of transhuman super soldier inferior to the Custodes, that were only male, the Adeptas Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, that were only female, and the Sisters of Silence, that were only female. So there was 2 female-only factions, 2 male-only factions, the rest was completely mixed. And yet, instead of focusing on the female faction, giving it more attention, more characters, more books, which I would have loved because I love those factions, they just went and said, okay, Custodes are women now. And the community exploded
Okay,
because
your
nobody liked that.
explanation does make sense. Your explanation does make sense because
Like,
it would be
I don't
it'd be a
want this. I don't
literal.
want.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
No, no, I don't
I-
want. No, sorry if I interrupted. Just like, I want to say, I don't want to be taken as a sexist. Like I sound always confrontational, but that is just my normal way of speaking. Unfortunately, it's also 1:35 a.m. Generally, I just want lore to make sense. This is why this retcon gives me so much problem because I always search for sense inside the universe sense for something to happen. And in the case of the female custodians, in this case, I cannot find it. There is no sense to this change. And that is what is giving me problems. Lore must make sense and must be grounded in reality, but the reality of the universe, not ours.
I'll just.
if I c- if I-
Yeah, I'm gonna let you go here. I just to bridge that gap, like from a historical context, that'd be like a male Amazonian would be like just coming out here, like you're coming from a nunnery, and suddenly it's men at the nunnery as well. Like I mean, it kind of just defeats the purpose of the word, and in that context, I think in a simpler sense for people that don't understand the deep lore we just dove down there. Very
Well,
Queen,
no,
what you
but
got
I mean,
for me?
like on a literal, you know, just productivity wise, like you would want all the female nobles to be busy creating children. Like that would
Yeah,
be
I mean,
like
in lore,
that's like a precious resource that you would be subjecting to war. Whereas the
and
sons
yeah,
are disposable essentially.
well, it's also
Uh,
Yep.
genetic like degradation due to chaos, mutation, and all sorts of stuff, and then they kill the mutants, and that's a whole different thing. So like you're already eliminating more of the population even further. I mean, yeah, it doesn't
yeah.
work in the lore like from what I've ever read, but and like Danny said, if your main goal is to make money, I think that they definitely hurt their sales overall. Like all the stuff that's included these characters has been just unanimously hated. I can't like.
They included controversy, not even character.
I mean, it could be
I-
like infertile females that they would force to do that. Like if a female was found to be
there's-
infertile, they could.
Well, there's other reasons. There's also other like scientific reasons and stuff too. But anyway,
Yeah, like wait a second, Gibbs, just to make it simple, like the process was created by the Emperor. The Emperor made it only for males, so the fact that he didn't make it for females will make it fail automatically. And because if the process fails, you die, they will be just killing female children.
And the like lack of new knowledge. So like even like the group that makes the science, which I know sounds weird to say, but the group that does that for this faction, they don't believe in new stuff. They only believe in like
they don't make new stuff.
Yeah, so like if they made a new thing that the Emperor didn't make, it would be like
heresy.
Heresy.
Oh, is the Emperor like that big skeleton thing that's like not really like...
That's his version from when he's on the Golden Throne, but before he was the Golden Giant, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so before we dive deep down any further than that, I'm gonna go to Fair Queen, but I had something. Go ahead, Fair Queen. Maybe what I had will come back to me.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to talk about, and I will defer to Charlie because Charlie knows more about Tolkien than I do. But my understanding of Tolkien, of like the purpose of the Lord of the Rings, was to create a mythology for England. A lot of the names are based off of. It is not. Okay, I'm wrong about that.
No,
that's
it was
my bad.
that's like a contentious statement within Tolkien studies. That's like highly debated. Primarily, though, because it was based off of a letter that he sent to his publisher. He was like, I once had pretensions to it. But in his own words, The Lord of the Rings was, and also his whole mythology, was created to essentially create a world to use his languages in. Like, because he was a philologist, first and foremost. Yeah. And he created all of these languages. The names, some of them are Old English. Some of them are of like, derived from like Finnish and other older Scandinavian languages.
Gotcha. Okay. So so that might be a mistake of mine. So my understanding up until now was that like the purpose of Lord of the Rings was to kind of have like the purpose of the Old English, and like and it was heavily inspired of the utilization of all of the language, and his background was to create a more authentic, essential England, like the place like from where England came from, like in the same way that you would find like myths and other, but that is not the purpose. No. Okay, that's my mistake. Well, so I guess I won't use Tolkien, but I'll use Superman. Okay, so Superman is an example. I think part of the reason why there is this reaction to changing the lore and to changing the stories is I don't think that it's just because it doesn't make sense like within like the way that the story is structured. I think that it's in part a criticism or a reaction to the way that what the story symbolizes has changed. So Superman is an example of that. Superman is, although it's not exactly American, like his like saying for years has been truth, justice, and the American way. He like is a classic American superhero, and Superman has changed vastly over like since like he was originally created, like in the early cartoons. He's changed vastly, like the way in which he's like been depicted. Most recently, the new Superman movie that just came out, in my opinion, is very different to the Superman that I've been used to for the past like 5 or 10 years. The Superman, like Henry Cavill Superman, I think he's a handsome Superman, but I have to be honest that like the performance like within that movie is a dark, gritty Superman. Okay, it's a Superman that allows buildings to explode, that tosses a train into skyscrapers. We also had Bright Eyes, or is it Bright Eyes or Brightburn? I don't remember. It was supposed to be a realistic, gritty version of like a young Superboy, okay? A young Clark Kent. And he's bullied at school. And because he's bullied at school, he laser beams all of his classmates and he becomes a serial killer. Like at the school, it's very horrible, okay? It's like a la Twilight Zone, okay? If you actually gave a kid superhuman powers, what would he do? And then, of course, The Boys, which we're all familiar with. That takes Superman and turns him into fascist Superman, right? You have Homelander. You have him with his blonde hair. You have him with the Captain America cape. You have him. It's the whole thing, right? these are all different iterations of what Superman means, And, you could probably argue constantly, well, this isn't what Superman would be. This isn't who Superman is. And recently, people have been having that conversation about the James Gunn Superman movie that just came out. And the reason why is because in this version of Superman flies over and tries to stop let me put it to you this way. A war that is happening with an ally of the United States overseas that appears to be in a Middle Eastern country, where you have a Middle Eastern coded group of people who are being surrounded with tanks and soldiers and machine guns, and they are crying out for Superman to come and save him. You have a lot of immigrants like this. The theme of immigration is very strong in the story. One of the pivotal scenes, like within this film, is where an immigrant who hands Superman a sandwich is brought in by Lex Luthor, who is coded to look like Elon Musk, and is shot in front of Superman as he's tortured, with a piece of kryptonite behind him. And people watched this version of Superman, right? And what did they say, when they saw this version of Superman? Because this Superman is probably the most liberal version of Superman I have seen in a very long time. Okay, at least within my lifetime. I can't remember the last time I've seen a Superman.
I will say that's the problem.
But hang on. But why is it a problem? It's not a problem because of the lore. That's not the reason.
No, it is not a problem because of the lore. It is a problem because it is too politicized. That is the point. You don't go to movies.
Can we let Fairy Queen talk though, real quick?
Yeah. Well, I just want to ask you, Fairy Queen, within your own context here. I think this kind of goes back to one thing Danny said. I just want you to maybe look at this when you finish what you're saying. Is Danny, once again, he mentioned the in-universe perspective, right? I think, and you and I have talked about the Superman a little bit, and I liked it. And I think part of the thing that they do well is they have this what if Superman's parents were evil colonials, and they built that into the lore, and they built that up over the other James Gunn works, where it's what if Superman came down to Washington D.C., right? So even though he might not actually be like that, they've established in canon why other groups think this way, and then they establish it. And I think even though it's politicized, they're relevant. It's kept true to the James Gunn lore so far. What are your thoughts? Do you think that helps? I think that helps your case. What do you think?
I think what I'm trying to say is that I don't know, and I have not seen the Rings of Power. Sorry, Tolkien fans everywhere, but Game of Thrones was my obsession. Okay, I've never been a Tolkien fan. Okay,
I love A Song of Ice and Fire. I love it.
Yay!
No, I was talking of Rings of Power, not of A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I've never seen Rings of Power, so I don't know, right? But my suspicion would be this, okay? Even if it was the case, I think, even if the authors of Rings of Power, and let's just say for the sake of argument, okay, that they did go into the lore, they did have a good explanation. They did have all of these explanations for why Galadriel was it was incredibly powerful. And then if I'm hearing you correctly, Danny, girl bossery, which is, I think, probably why people, the words that have been used to criticize Galadriel, or why there are black dwarves, or why there are black elves. I would suspect that even if it was the case that the authors tried to give an in-lore, in-universe, well-founded explanation for why that is, I think you would still have people complain. I think people would say
complain about everything.
Yeah, but I'm not finished. Okay, they would say that they wouldn't say that if it wasn't an argument about the lore, it would be an argument that it's too politicized and it's too DEI.
And it is true. It is true.
Because that's what people said about Superman, and it was incredibly lore-based. It's incredibly within the lore of Superman.
Okay, it can be incredibly lore-based,
but global superhero. And so I think that honestly, it would not be honest for us to have this conversation.
No, it will be okay. Let me ask you a question.
Quiet, okay? It would not be honest for us to have this conversation without acknowledging that I think that some of the arguments and concerns over lore, I don't know if they're actually about lore or if it's actually just more, I hate DEI, I hate woke
I
shit.
do hate DEI. Wokeness should fucking burn, if you ask me. The main problem is, okay, let me ask you a question. What is a movie? What is the main objective of a movie?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me what a movie is? Define movie.
Is a movie something made to entertain the audience?
I think it's a moving picture. That's what I heard last time. Okay.
Okay. Is a movie something made to entertain the audience that is watching it?
Yes.
Why are you asking me this stupid question? Okay, just
No,
answer.
no, it is
What are
not.
you,
It
Dwight
is not a
Schrute?
stupid question.
Don't walk us
It
through
is
this.
your
Just say
answer.
what you want to
Don't
say,
interrupt
okay?
me. I didn't. You don't
Fuck
want to be
you.
interrupted. Don't
Fuck
interrupt.
off.
Fuck you. Fucking
You're
woke
ranting about
bitch.
racism.
Anyway,
Fuck
the
you.
Whoa,
Wow.
hey,
You
whoa,
I don't
that,
give a
that's
fuck.
okay.
I
Jesus
don't give a fuck about you.
Christ.
Wow, what a fucking jerk, okay?
If
You have
I
been
have to
ranting
speak
the
with
most
a retard, I will
racist,
speak like I'm
sexist
speaking
shit
with
the
a.
entire
Hey,
time, okay?
whoa, Gibbs.
Fuck off, you
I've
fucking
heard you.
asshole. Go back
let's
to
get to
Italy,
our-
eat some pasta, and
Oh
calm down,
god damn!
okay?
Oh god damn! We can't say that either. God damn! What is happening? All right. No more of that.
I do have a comment to make. So
No more
one
that.
of
Yeah.
one of
So
my
order, yeah.
one of my peers in my graduate program in fantasy literature, two of them were from Italy, and they told me that fantasy has a really bad rep in Italy because of the association with white nationalism and fascism. So a lot of like fantasy fans in Italy are like, people are very sus of them. Sci-fi has a much better reputation.
I
Not
don't know.
really. Now, wait a second. Let's return a bit. First thing, I insulted you because you told me to go fuck myself. So don't do that. Removing that, the point I was trying
Who
to
said
make
I
is
will tell
it
you
is.
to do that again. Don't you ever call me that again, okay? You've been awful this
Okay.
entire time and ranting.
Don't
Fuck
worry, I
off,
don't like you
okay?
either. I don't have to like you. Anyway, the main
Yeah, that's all
problem.
we calm down.
No.
No
The main
calling.
problem is that the fact that a movie is made to entertain also means that it must be detached from reality. It is not to politicized for the themes that is presenting. Yeah, do the gestures as usual. They all do them. The problem is not that it is politicized by itself, because if it had in-universe politicization, that would have been fine. The problem is that, as you mentioned, it makes too many references to reality. I don't go to the movies to see the equivalent of evil guy Elon Musk into Superman, the equivalent of the question now again about immigrants. I don't go there to see Orange Man Bad. I go there to see Superman, a story about Superman. Again, this is the approach where you don't go with gloves, you go with the fucking sledgehammer. That is why everyone is angry about the woke movement. There is no subtlety. Everything is either black or white.
Including the dwarves. But listen, Mussolini.
Yes, and they
okay?
shouldn't.
This is the problem, okay?
All right, that was
Look,
pretty good.
okay? Listen, okay?
I wasn't
Here's the
expecting that
problem,
one.
okay?
That was pretty good.
Listen, okay? I don't know how to say this, okay? But a lot of fantasy and a lot of sci-fi and superhero movies throughout the years, okay? They are political. They absolutely are. And they absolutely are supposed to be allegorical. I mean, actually,
Yes,
this
but
might be a difference
delicately,
between
not
CS
violently. That's the difference.
That's not true. That is not true. That is not true.
No, it is true. It is true.
Tolkien and between C.S. Lewis. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis deliberately disagreed on symbolism and the use of the allegory within their literature. And C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia are known as classic pieces of literature. They are explicitly Christian allegories, okay? Whereas within, Tolkien's work, it's not supposed to be an explicit allegory, but it is supposed to be heavily inspired by his Catholic faith. And so, like, to try to remove that or to try to take that away from it, I even wonder.
I'm not saying
like,
you should remove it, but you should treat it with more delicacy.
Okay? Yeah,
Okay, so you can interrupt me, but I cannot interrupt you. Good to know.
No, you can't. Be quiet.
Let's just go one at a time. Everybody, calm down. One at a time. Try to keep peace here. Go ahead. Finish out, Fairy Queen, and then I'm going to let you respond. And I have a question.
Okay.
So maybe move it
I don't know how else to say this. Superheroes are political. They have a history of being political. They have a history of trying to, at least in the United States, they're supposed to be the symbol of the United States. There's a reason why Superman's motto for years have been truth, justice, and the American way. He is supposed to be a symbol of what it is to be an American. It is why, he was written in this way by Jewish immigrants that wrote the character in the first place. And so to ignore this, to try to strip that away from him, to say, I don't want this to be political. I'm sorry, but all literature is political. There's no getting away from it, okay? All literature is a product of its time. All literature is a product of the person that wrote it. You're surrounded by the literature that inspired you to write it from before, how it's interpreted, the economic, all of these things. You do not get to make a movie that is not political. Even if you try to make it apolitical, that is still a political choice, okay? And for you to go into a movie and to say, well, I don't want this all shoved in my face. You don't want to look at the lore. That's what Superman is. I'm sorry, okay? Superman
still
is
being misunderstood. It is not
you're
what I'm
not well
saying.
read.
Yeah. So Danny,
well.
you
Actually,
respond, then
I'm
gonna
speaking. I'm speaking technically a second language, not the first one like you. So maybe I'm a bit less versed into talking with people. But removing that, the main problem is not once again that it is political by itself. It is that it is too modern day political. If I want to see this story, why the fuck are you making an allegory for Elon Musk? If I want to see drama about Elon Musk, I go on Twitter. I don't go on the movies. Why should I see a story about immigration when the entire topics of everything, documentaries, news and everything, is about political Trump and fucking immigration even here in Italy? I can understand that you want to put subtext inside your movie, but you need to do it delicately and as removed from modern day
No,
as you
not in a
can.
Superman movie.
Disconnect
No.
it.
I would say
Let me
that
just-
I would
let me-
say
hold- let
that
me-
I would. Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
I
I
would
just wanna
say
jump in.
that well, one, again, Superman, as far as I'm not a big superhero person, but immigration does seem to be integral to Superman's story. But also, I mean, good luck making any work of art that is outside the context of the time in which you live. Even if you don't intend it to be, again, like, even if we're trying to make a perfect one-on-one of, like, let's say Wuthering Heights, or some sort of other, like, older novel, we can only do so through our modern interpretation of like that time period and our understanding of that period of history. Again, even you can try as hard as you want, but it's going to be extremely difficult, and I don't think that there's anything wrong, especially if it is within the spirit of the author's original intent. I don't think that there's anything wrong with, and again, superhero movies are not terribly artsy. They kind of hit you over the head with the messages because it's meant to be, understood and enjoyed by people of all ages. So like Tolkien, yes, Catholic context to it, but more broadly, also an anti-war message. So if someone were to make like a Tolkien adaptation of anything that had like very explicit anti-war messages that maybe referred more to modern warfare versus the warfare that Tolkien would have, experienced, World War I and World War II, I wouldn't have an issue with it because I'd be like, well, yeah, this is speaking to the same issue that we're experiencing now, just slightly different. It makes it more relatable and interesting, frankly. It continues the conversation. It continues to make art relevant and worthy.
Can I ask a question, though?
Well,
Can I ask
sure,
a
but
question?
I'm gonna go say something here. Wait, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The question I want to ask is, then if that is true and we cannot remove anything modern from something political like art and such, which character in House of the Dragon is the Trump allegory?
Is the what?
Well, is the Trump allegory?
Is the Trump
It
allegory?
doesn't have to be an allegory. I would say that
Then if Trump
it's not
can
allegory.
just not be mentioned there, why should it be in a Superman movie? It can be done without. Why is done with it?
Well, hold on. So can I? I want to respond to that real quick. I'll include that kind of my thing because I think I'm kind of between y'all's positions here a little bit, right? Like so. All right, just to go by, my background's poli-sci, right? That's my undergrad, and I like specialized political theory, and to get some of the political theory certificates from the Bush Library, one of the classes we had to take was science fiction and public policy, right? And so we examined like books like The Forever War. We had like Starship Troopers, Ender's Game. You like cover some of several. I don't know. There's a whole bunch. It's been a few years, 10 years now probably. But so when we're looking at this, like sci-fi has actually like always been inherently written to like be a commentary on on like the current state of politics, right? You have like love letters to like fascism, you have love letters to socialism, you have like things saying dystopian stuff, like they all go into theory that can't be explained. It's like a thought exercise. That's a big part of sci-fi as a universe, right? And that's kind of what differentiates, I think, Star Wars, where it's a space opera, and 40K, where it's like an amalgamation, I can't even say the word, where it's a like, combination of all these different genres combined into it, and they all have bits and pieces. And so when I'm looking at this, superheroes do kind of fall in this inherently political category. Like, V for Vendetta is written specifically to speak about certain policies that are having
Guy Fawkes, yeah.
Right. When I'm like, yeah, Guy Fawkes, right? And then like Superman, it's like this, what if we're the bad guys? You see the Red Dawn thing, or whatever. You see all this stuff. And then when I look at like sci-fi, I see that a lot as well. It's like commentary or satire where it takes its own universe, or it's parody, or it's like, these things. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, I actually really enjoy it when it's done well. And I like it a lot. And like, and I've commented how much I like the Andor stuff because I think it does that. It's like done universe. It's subtle. You know, you have like some of the Trumpian stuff applied to Palpatine, but not really, right? Like it's just there's like the allegory, like potential this big bad kind of thing, but it's like not whatever. And I like how that's done, right? And then I look at same thing if I look at Star Wars where there's this DEI aspect where it's very ham-fisted. Like, okay, maybe this is a personal complaint, but like the Acolyte, it like has some of the best fighting I've ever seen from Star Wars. But then I turned right
Yeah.
around and it's got okay, you have just no canon stuff that doesn't make sense. You have the forced inclusion of like characters that wouldn't be this thing at all, and you just like and there's like major problems, and they do it with this express purpose of getting DEI in there and hand fisting, and that's a real problem. And I have a major issue with that, as opposed to like when I talk about Star Wars, I'm a conservative. I think most people here know that, right? I like leftist media, I guess, in this regard. I like Star Wars. It's very good, and it's always been a left-leaning message. Like you gave a leading role to, Billy Dean Williams in The Empire Strikes Back. He's a major character going forward, right? This is somebody who's very progressive. He's like not a fan of Nixon. He wrote Palpatine to be Nixon, and then later he added Bushian ideas. Like this is not a guy that likes it. So, and I still enjoy this, but it's kind of like so when I'm seeing this, I'm trying to like bridge this gap because I do see the complaints
Yeah.
that you're making, Danny. But I'm at the same time, I'm like, he's right about the DI being a problem when they do this. And the Lord, like, if you change the Lord just to be DI, that's a problem. But like, I don't necessarily have a problem with the politics in it. Does that make sense? But go ahead, Fairy Queen.
It is what I said.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I was gonna say
Nobody
too.
agrees.
Like, I think that House of the Dragons, like, actually is an example, and I have seen clips of it. To be clear, I haven't seen
That's
the
like War
entire thing,
Roses.
but
It is good. It is good.
I thought that, like, for the few, like, the bits of it that I have seen are very good, and there are progressive elements, like, within the series that it does
Yes.
really well. So an example of this would be like the Valyrian blood. One problem that you have, well, a problem, this is just a part of the world building, is there's a lot of incest amongst the Targaryens. Okay, they have a great deal of incest between uncles and nieces, between brothers and sisters, between cousins, in order to keep the Valyrian blood pure. And so one thing that the family tries to do to try to keep Valyrian blood within the family is they try to marry into another family that is also of unimpeachable Valyrian blood. And that's the Valyrians who live in Dragonstone. They don't live in Dragonstone. What is it? It's the other, I can't remember. It's the other, it's where the old sea dragon is. Like, often, I don't remember the name of it. But basically, okay, these characters are Valyrian. They have pure white hair, but they have black skin. And that's on purpose. There's a reason for that, like, within that series. It works really well. And the purpose of that is to differentiate them from the Targaryens, okay? It's there so that you can clearly distinguish who is a Valyrian and who is a Targaryen character, because otherwise it becomes too confusing. You mix the people up with the silver white hair, and because that's how they try to differentiate people, like, within the book.
It actually is a
within
very
the
good
movie
addition
series,
of lore
actually.
also, because there is actually a drama that comes out after about the main character actually having extramarital relationship, because the man of the Valarian family she married is actually gay, so she's having an affair, and the children that are born are bastards, and this becomes a very big plot point later. There is a little mention removing that Gibbs Magin wrote to me and asked to be dragged in. I don't know if you want that, but he told me. I'm telling you. Removing that. Removing that, there is a comment that has been made in the chat that I want to address for a second about the fact that comic books were always political. Yes, I can agree to an extent with that. The problem is the kind of politics. In one way, like Gibbs pretty much explained, in one case they were going to the politics with the gloves. Recently, they've started doing it with the sledgehammer, and there is a reason the comic book industry of the USA is failing to manga, because nobody wants to be beaten over the head with recent culture war politics. They want to read a story that detaches them from reality.
I kind of don't. Actually, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. I did not grow up, like, reading the comic books. I grew up watching the cartoons as a child, and, like, most of, like, the films. But I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly the truth. I think that actually the opposite. Well, one thing that I know that people have complained about comic book portrayals for a very long time is the fact that they look very highly pornographic. And I know that that is something that people have had increasing problems with, like, within the comic books. Like, you'll go to pick up a comic book, right? And you'll have, like, this woman with her boobs practically bursting out of her superhero uniform, and there's no reason for it to be there. The reason for why it's there is to sexually stimulate like the person that picks up and buys the comic book. And we live in a world where porn is like easily accessible, where it's practically being shoved in your face all of the time. I mean, we have to be, and frankly, it's so easy to watch animated comics. Like you can watch the Batman the animated series, you can see the Justice League, you can see all of these different like animated versions of the superhero cartoons that you don't have the need for comics for the pornographic element, because people are tired of that and they can access that in other forms. And you don't need it also in order to experience or to be familiarized with the world. The only people I think that actually like still read or still participate like within the comics are people who are heavily interested in knowing the deep, dark lore of everything that has to do like with the superhero people. I don't think it's people that it's not kids, okay, who are 10 years old lying in front of the fireplace flipping through their favorite Superman comic. I'm not sure that that's really happening anymore. I think probably more likely that kid is sitting in front of the television with their iPad watching, the Justice League, like on Hulu. They're not like, so comic books have become kind of anachronistic. And I kind of think the only reason you have that is that if you're an old-timer person who's loved superheroes for a really long time, or if you're a scholar and you're trying to conduct some kind of research on the history of the character, or you're just an amateur and you're interested in the history of the character. But I don't think people are really using comic books for like just pastime entertainment in the way that they used to be used.
I would actually disagree with that for the simple fact that mangas are now overselling the entire comic book industries of the USA by single releases. I'm not saying like generally the entire manga scene is overselling the entirety of the USA comic book scene. I'm saying just Demon Slayer, one series of manga, oversold the entire industry of the comic book from the USA, for the simple fact that, as you said, yes, maybe it was over-sexualized. I don't like that term because it really depends in context, but some of the portrayals were, for both men and women, were over-sexualized. But at the same time, they were a lure. People wanted to look at very attractive characters of both sides, and they wanted to see the best version of themselves that they can or cannot be. And that was a big lure of the comic books. Now, sexualization apart, because that is a completely different problem. If your entire comic book industries, now that politics are not handled well, are handled like with a sledgehammer, as I said, they are beating you over the head with stuff. Like there is entire series of even Superman that just focuses on his gay son. I can understand you want to make the undertone of the character a gay version of the son of Superman. That is fine. But you cannot make the entire comic book on that. You need to make something else. It can be a trait of Superman, but it cannot be the only thing that the comic book talks about. Like, there is an entire number of the comic book that goes over how the son of Superman just goes on to the Pride Parade. And I'm like, okay, but this is a Superman comic. Can we see something, even Superman aligned? I will say it is just the mishandling of the messages that are being portrayed. It is going from just an assertive but hidden message that makes you question the stuff that happens to just beating you over the head with the correct interpretation without anything else.
I
There is
would,
not an
I would
undertone.
say that I think comics are, granted, I haven't read a lot of comics or interact with superhero media a lot. I actually specifically don't really like it because I do think it's extremely ham-fisted.
What
Like
about
it
with
just
Tolkien,
does
though?
beat you over the head, even in its earliest iterations. It's just like, this
Yep.
is what we're trying to tell you. This is it. Don't use your
So-
brain.
Yep.
We will tell you
So,
what's going on.
let me-
And it's like, so I feel like,
Let me-
yeah, like to that is very comic booky. Show him at the Pride Parade because that's what comics do. Is it's like, he's gay. Did you know he's gay? Did you forget that he's gay? And they do it with everything. It's
So
because it's like,
I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say.
They
Just
do,
just
that's
take the
true.
Killing Joke. The Killing Joke, that is one of the most popular comics of all time about Batman, was all literally about how one single bad day can bring a man from being a normal person in a functioning society to Joker level of craziness. This story also has a perfect finale because you don't know if actually Batman survived that day or he became like Joker. Like the final panel of the comic is Batman with hands on Joker, but you see only the shadow, so you don't know if he's laughing and just leaning on Joker or he's strangling him, proving Joker right. That is what comic books are. They must make you ask questions. They must be so well written that by the end you are left even questioning your own interpretation. Beating you over the head with a message will just make you numb to it, to a point that at one point you will start not wanting it around. Generally,
let me ask a question here. Let me just ask a question. All right, so like specifically to you, Charlie, right? So okay, I think maybe there's some disagreement on like what's a good like comic or what's a good like example for political mission. But let me ask you this. So from my understanding, and maybe you can correct me where I'm wrong here. Tolkien puts a lot of Christian themes, and he's friends with C.S. Lewis in his real life, and this is like some of the stuff's like allegories for Christian stuff, etc., etc. I'm sure you can go into more detail or whether or not that's true. However, I like. What about whenever in like for the example, I'm trying to think of what the example. It's been a little bit since I watched Rings of Power, but they in the Rings of Power, and it seems like they introduce characters that like in situations that are very modern, and they're very some things that would be against what Tolkien, the author, would have, like, right? And we see this kind of with J.K. Rowling with some of the trans stuff, but like, and then at the same time, she flips on other issues, like with the LGBTQ. And we see it's like, well, okay, what would you do if you just made things that like the author would be very against within the realm, but just because it's politically relevant, or we're doing a modern adaptation? Do you have like problems with that per se, or what are your thoughts?
So my thoughts on that are, Tolkien actually had openly gay friends. He was friends with, I don't remember the name, but an openly gay poet, and then one of his friends was a lesbian female author. The only thing Tolkien's ever said about gay people was he hadn't heard the word homosexual until he was 19. So if someone was to include, there's also a lot of vaguely homoerotic stuff happening in the Lord of the Rings. Stuff that's like, it could be due to the era, it could be kind of like these guys are kind of in love. I mean, the point specifically with, I'm thinking of Sam and Frodo, the point at the end of the day is that these two men loved each other very much. In what capacity, who cares? They loved each other, and it was a very powerful love. But it's also a love that is constantly compared to, the great love stories that Tolkien wrote. Even in his own writing, Beren and Luthien is the main one that I would think of, and also Galadriel and Celeborn. So if someone were to include anything openly LGBT in Tolkien's Legendarium, I don't think it would be negative. I don't think Tolkien would hate that. I think that if it was super sexy and horny, that would be very not Tolkien-y, because Tolkien isn't really into super sexy stuff. He's actually very... you can read Shelob very much as a fear of sexuality. But I think as long as it's in the spirit of the author's intentions, I think it's totally fine.
Let me just jump in here real quick for a little house. Majin is giving me money to come in and ask, or give an example and ask a question real quick. So I'm going to bring you in for 2 minutes, and we'll just let him hear. The champ is here! And then we'll just
fuck sakes.
All right, go ahead. Get your question in your point real quick.
Anyways, I promise you, if you didn't drag me in here, I would never sub again. Anyways,
it's called bribery. Bribery works for Gibbs. I am a capitalist.
Okay.
So yeah.
So going back to these examples of superheroes, I'm kind of well diverse on like both Superman, Marvel, and DC, all that good jazz. I don't really, even though I can go into like a lot of the stuff on Superman, one of his most infamous comic books, right now is about Superman turning evil in what is those Injustice
comics? Yeah,
and these have played into a lot of different stories.
Did
he crash?
Hello?
He pays money.
Hello?
Finally brings it in. You're back.
No, I'm here. More of an emotional Superman. Right now they have a comic run.
I'm sorry, Jeb, but I'm right.
No, the audio.
Your mic's out again.
Huh?
I'm sorry,
your mic
Jeb.
cut out again.
You have gay friends.
There's a situation called, or new comics books called Absolute Superman, and a universe that Darkseid created, which is a lot more grittier Superman, a Superman that is willing to commit violence. One of the entertaining things is that Superman is somebody that is fragile. He is the biggest stick out there. And when things that are taken away from him, when he has to deal with real trauma and emotion, he breaks. He turns evil. He turns bad. He's not this big symbol of peace that he's being propagated as. I do want to go to a situation though. With the DEI and a very bad example, the show that, or a very bad example of DEI, but it shows that this was only implemented to be a cash grab to to people nowadays. There's a character. It's actually a TV series now called Ironheart, right? Um, a lot. Yeah, I know a lot of people. That's a big subject, right? And it has to do with this character named Riri Wilson, right? Super smart person, right? Was able to do some of the most incredible things in like science and all that, right? One of these incredible things was to break the Stark code be smart enough to create another Iron Man armor, right? In the comic books, there's two things called Armor Wars and Demon in a Bottle. Tony Stark got tired of people stealing Stark tech, right? So he got really, really drunk and he went around and he like clapped up a bunch of people, right? One of these people, including to be like, is also Doctor Doom, one of the smartest people, if not the smartest person in the Marvel Universe. Doctor Doom could not recreate Stark tech. He had to steal it, right? So out of nowhere, some random kid from wherever, right? Somehow, barely into MIT, breaks the Stark code and is able to create an Iron Man suit. This is dog shit, right? This is just horrible writing, right? You've retconned a lot of things, right? Now, I pose y'all with a really good question here. If y'all know something about comics, who is Iron Man's best friend?
I don't know. Just tell us.
Tony
Come on.
Rose.
There we
So-
go.
sorry,
Thank you,
Rose.
Danny. Yeah, James Rhodes,
James.
right? Who's also a black man, like Riri Wilson is a black woman, right? They could have easily changed Riri Wilson's last name to and named her Riri Rhodes. All this shit about DEI, all this shit that people are pissed off evaporates. It disappears, right? Because now you have a legacy character. You have something that makes sense. You
Well, that's
have
not necessarily better though, Majin. Like just
Hold on, let me finish. You have somebody that was sitting there the whole time with Uncle Tony and Papa Rhodes while they worked on the Iron Man suits, right? She could be all smart and everything too. Tony Stark's rich. Tony Stark could have sent her to the best of schools to make sure she got the best of educations because that's her niece. Or that's his niece, right? But at this point, you don't have dog shit writing that explains something impossible in the mythos that shouldn't even fucking exist. She would
Well,
learn from the best to make the Iron Man suit.
Well,
Go ahead,
just to
Gibbs.
push back against that real quick, and then I'll move you out here and let you get one more thought here real quick. But like, I have a problem in the Star Wars universe where everything goes back to like 5 families. It's like, oh, we got Luke Skywalker, we got the Skywalkers, bro, and there's like 15 of them, and then we got a story taking place 1,800 years later, and it's fucking the Skywalkers are back again, and it's like, okay, how many times can we keep going? And it's like, oh, we're going into Star Wars canon, and then all of a sudden, the president of this planet is, oh, it's Han Solo's cousin, and it's like, okay, not everything can be the same 5 families, and like in a world like the Marvel world where there's super geniuses, the idea that like one random prodigy couldn't come up with like reverse engineers tech. Isn't too far fetched for me, and actually could be a good thing.
Nobody. There's
as
even
opposed to legacy, though. I don't know, but I'll let you respond real quick, and then I'll move you out.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep going here.
even with Reed Richards and stuff like that, people that are smarter than Tony. Tony is only like smart when it comes to like the intellectual diaspora of like the Marvel universe, right? Each person fills like a certain niche, right? Tony Stark is robotics and technology. Reed Richards is like biology, space shit, da da da. Bruce Banner is radiation. And Spider-Man's a jack of all trades, right? Adam Bashir, Blue Marvel, is also one of the top tier guys, right? There's also Valeria Richards. This is actually a counter to what you were saying. Valerian Richards, Reed Richards' daughter, who's questionably smarter than her and Doom, or him and Doom put together. But Marvel doesn't have that royalty problem. There's not a lot of legacy characters. You probably got Franklin Richards and Valerian Richards. Peter Parker doesn't have a son. There's no relationship to Tony Stark. Steve
I mean,
Rogers
I
doesn't
think this
have
could be a whole
anybody.
different panel to itself. We can talk about the legacy problem a different day, because I disagree with this statement too. But
I'm just replying back to what you said.
sure,
You
that's
just try to
fine. But
rush me out of here.
I am a little bit because I have
Yeah,
a timetable today. I got a second
yeah.
show to do, and I know it's super late for the
Gibbs
day.
is trying to say this
Nah, no
panel's
problem.
uncontrollable, and I'm like, bro, you just don't want me on here. That's all that is.
No, it's just sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
I love you, Majin. Don't be like that. All right, I'm moving
Imagine
on.
Dark Angels still suck.
Dark Angels are the best, and I would be on this panel to help you if Gibbs would allow it. I
Well,
asked
fine.
him.
And he's gone. All right, so moving back here.
No,
Yeah, I mean,
like I want to add only one thing. One of the main complaints about the Ironheart series is that the main character spends the entire first episode actually insulting Tony Stark. Like, oh yeah, I have nothing. I came from the streets. Tony Stark was a millionaire when he made the and yet you go in the first movie. Tony Stark built the first Iron Man armor while a prisoner of the Taliban's in a cave, and everyone is like, is this character really this stupid, insulting Tony Stark like this?
I think these problems where they're like hand-fisted, just like that's what, like, that one kind of goes with the Ryan Johnson thing, where like people make a choice. This is actually a different problem than DEI. Actually, I think in the lore, this is a
No,
problem.
that's just shitty writing. Don't worry.
Sure, right, yeah,
mention it
you're right.
just
But
once.
no. I think there's another problem that we hadn't really talked about here that I think actually you just might have talked about, which is we get these directors that sometimes will do things not for even DEI purposes. And I'm not sure if Ryan Johnson, I think he did do it for DEI for some of the stuff he did, but I think he also wanted to make a mark. And sometimes people will do something lore breaking in order to like that they like know that they'll be remembered in this way forever. Like, is that a problem y'all are seeing? Do y'all think that's an issue that's coming up with some of these things? They want like doing something just so that they're the character, the guy that's remembered for like doing something crazy in the lore, like or like, you know what I'm. Does that make sense?
I think
No.
that
No, okay, like, so a big thing with Ryan Johnson, the reason why people are so upset is not just the DI, but like at the end he ran a campaign kind of, it was called "Fuck Your Fan Theory," and then like one of the follow-ups was "Fuck Your Lore," right? And he basically was like, I things need to change, things need to progress, and he like purposely did things that broke major canon issues, and it feels like he did it just so his name is permanently attached, and you'll remember this guy forever in perpetuity in this franchise, whether for good or bad. Does it make
I mean,
sense?
I think that people do, things like for narcissistic reasons. Absolutely. But I guess I just want to talk about the DEI stuff. I mean, I feel like sometimes a story can just be bad, and it doesn't have to be because the character involved in the story is like a lady or gay or like not white. I think sometimes people just write a bad story, and I feel like when we pin it on DEI, it kind of sucks because then it's like people are like less inclined to, make things that include characters that aren't like straight white guys. And I don't know. I guess I just want to push back on that a little bit because I've read a lot of stories where, straight white guys are the main characters, adaptations of many films, games, books, etc. And it sucks shit and ass, you know? Like I thought Kylo Ren was a dog shit villain. I thought that the Kylo Ren Rey love story, that was a, white heterosexual love story. I thought it was dookie asshole. I thought it was bad. And mind you, I'm not a big Star Wars person, but those were my thoughts. Think about the Dragon Ball Z movie. That sucked.
Oh.
Where they had just like a random white guy as the main character. That was
not good.
That was ass. Like the first Mortal Kombat is so fucking campy. It's now kind of a masterpiece, to be honest. But like they had all those like random like white people playing like characters that were like not white, and it was shit. Like it sucked. Like it was bad. So I just think like sometimes maybe the issue isn't like the skin color. I think you can just sometimes not write a good story, and it has nothing to do with the gender, the race, or the sexuality.
While I
Yeah.
agree with that, the problem is that, in my opinion, you are downplaying the problem of DEI. Nobody's saying that a character can't be black. Nobody's saying that a character can be a lesbian. Nobody's saying that a character can be gay. The problem is how you use that character. The problem is not what, it's the how. Like the Dragon Ball movie you mentioned was shit because it was a live action, and live action Dragon Ball, exactly how? Like, I don't know if you can even make it foreseeably. Even then, the problem was the story had nothing to do with the comics, the characters were not well represented, the powers were not well represented, the fighting sucks, the writing sucks. It is a general problem, but nobody attributed the movie failure to DEI. It was just a dogshit movie. The problem is when the dogshit writing actually comes from DEI ideology. It is not a problem of what is used, but how. One of my main favorite stories of Warhammer Horror, which is a series of books always related to Warhammer, is The King of Pigs. The main character is a gay man married to another man, and that had at one point an adopted daughter that died, unfortunately, of disease because he's an hive worker. That book is extremely good, but not because the character is gay and we needed more representation, but because the fact that the character is gay doesn't impact the story that much. It is a characterization. The character is gay, he has an husband and had a daughter. Okay, good. And then the story moves on. The connection remains. You know the character has an husband, he had a daughter, and there is an entire story about him seeing her in his dreams, then he comes out, it is chaos, corruption, and an entire thing. But the entire story is not centered on the fact that the character by itself is gay. It's centered on the fact that this gay character goes through a story, and this is just one piece, one tiny piece of his personality. It's not the center of it. You cannot take a character, make him gay, and there. You need to give him characterization other than his sexuality. And even when you take that, the problem of DEI doesn't even stop there. When you are representing something that has already representation in media, I will say like the recent casting that is happening for the new series of Harry Potter, where they cast a black man for Severus Snape. Now, he can be the best actor in the world, but we have a characterization of the character. We have drawings of Rowling when she made that character. He was always described with long hair, white, pale skin, sickly skin, big nose. He was pretty much white man, but ugly. Now, even then, do you want to tell me that when they get to the scene where Severus Snape, when he was a kid, was being bullied, from the father of Harry Potter and everything else, do you really want to tell me that doesn't change the perspective of it from him being an outcast to him being bullied because he's black? Do you want really to tell me that by changing this tiny detail, it doesn't change the interpretation of something that happens later? That is the problem. It is a DI-inspired change that ruins a character moment because it makes characters that were just assholes to the outcast into characters that were actively racist. But some of them are the heroes of some of the books. You understand where the problem is
so
now?
I'm not a Harry Potter person. I've never
Let me
liked
just do
Harry.
one little
I've never. Oh,
I'll let you
okay.
respond, and then I'm just gonna say, let's just make closings as well. Why don't you go ahead and respond, and you make it a closing? Sorry, I have a slight time schedule thing going here.
Okay.
My bad. I apologize.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead, Charlie.
So closings. I'm not a big Harry Potter person, and it goes beyond J.K. Rowling being an asshole. I've just always hated Harry Potter. I thought it was lame. So I just thought the magic wasn't that cool, I guess. But like,
Agreed.
wasn't the whole thing like Harry Potter's dad was a big asshole, right? Like, and I don't see
No.
much of a difference between like.
Hold on.
Like,
just let
isn't
it-
like bullying someone for being
Finish.
black also like kind of just as bad as bullying someone for being like weird? Like, I feel like the bullying is
Yes.
kind of
Well, hold on,
the
Dave. You're
same.
just gonna go after. We're gonna close here. Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
also, sorry, yeah.
Oh, I guess. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, at the end of the day, I think that changes to lore are fine. Because from medium to medium, you're going to have different. You know. Restraints or constraints rather. And so changes will always happen when you switch to a new medium. And I think that as long as it's in the spirit of the original work or answers a question posed by the original source material, I think that that's totally fine.
I'll add my answer very fast so you can stay to your timetable. The fact of Harry Potter's father being an asshole, that is true only in the flashbacks when he was a kid. He was an asshole when he was a kid. When he grew up, he actually repented for a lot of stuff, tried to protect the mother of Harry, like fought Voldemort hand to hand. He wasn't the smartest one, like at least get a wand, but he became a good guy. He was an asshole when he was a child. It is immaturity of children. But I really think it will change the big interpretation from him being an asshole to the outcast kid, and we can all relate to the outcast kid, and make him look even worse when he's technically one of the main heroes of the story, because the Order of the Phoenix, he was one of the main resistance member against Voldemort. It will change the interpretation of the scene from him being an asshole to the outcast, because Severus Snape wasn't really a good person to be around even when he was a kid. He was moody, he was always sarcastic and such. He changes that interpretation to him being an asshole to the black kid, which is technically the wrong interpretation of the scene.
Well, I mean, I think that it also represents that people can change. I mean, there's certainly, I think that that's a kind of, well, to be honest, every time I meet a white man, I think, yeah, you were probably like really evil on Call of Duty, huh? And that's just like, but people change, they become better. And so I think James Potter could have been maybe a little racist. He probably was, even if Snape is white, because he's like a white dude from Britain in the 90s. He's probably a little racist. And then you could be a better person when you get older and not be an asshole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think the premise is the
Yeah,
same.
real quick.
I
Why don't
actually,
you give y'all shout outs real quick, and then very quick you can close out with your closing thoughts and you give yours as well. Sorry, just where are they gonna find you, Charlie?
Oh, Enemy Charlie. I primarily stream on Twitch. This is my first YouTube stream. You can also find me on Twitter. I rarely post on Instagram, but I'm Enemy Charlie everywhere.
Danny, where can they find you?
On the Pontius on YouTube.
Fantastic. And very quick closing thoughts. Where can they find you and everything? Sorry for the rush.
No, that's okay. You can find me at DaReal, DaRealFQ on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm mostly on Twitter, though, okay? If you want to fight with me, you can fight with me there, or I can hop on stream. I don't dodge, okay? So if you want to talk to me, I will. I guess closing thoughts, I do have something to say about the Harry Potter thing. I'll just say it very quickly. I don't think that the change that it makes to that interpretation of the character is bad, because my understanding of like Snape as a character is that he's meant to be kind of like an incel. He's meant to be like sort of like this guy who wants to like desperately wants to be with Lily, and he's seething because James he feels has usurped. He can't ever really be with Lily. Like that is definitely it seems like the intent of the character, even though the word isn't specifically used. And frankly, the choice to like have the character be a black man as opposed to a white man is in line with what we know about research regarding people that describe themselves as incels. That is, the majority of people that describe themselves in that way are mostly men of color. They are mostly men that have some kind of a disability, and they are mostly men that come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. They are men that come from impoverished places that don't have a lot of resources. And we have to be honest that a lot of those resource places are frequently, like, unfortunately, oftentimes people of color like come from those backgrounds and from those areas, like in the United Kingdom and within the United States. And so I think that it is not only appropriate, it probably makes sense to update the character of Severus Snape to reflect that reality, because it is the reality, and it's the reality of millions of men that are currently struggling right now in the United States and overseas in the United Kingdom. But closing thoughts would be this. The importance of lore, it goes back to like why the importance of fiction itself. And that's that fiction is like, it's why do we care about the Greek myths? We care about them the same reason why we care about superheroes, Lord of the Rings, and all of these different stories. It's because they've transcended lore. They're supposed to be symbols of something greater, symbols of the nation, symbols of love, symbols of the hero's journey. And I think that while I think it's important to have historical context and everything that Enemy Charlie said, I also think that there's no reason like why we shouldn't allow stories to be able to evolve with the time in order to be able to appropriately reflect the symbols and like reflect what people are thinking, and to use these stories to help them get by. So that's my closing thoughts.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is good. This got a little more heated than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I didn't know lore was so contentious a subject. Maybe I should have thought wrong. But I thank y'all so much for coming. This was fun. Guys, here in about 5 minutes, we're going to be starting a panel over Water commodification, and then the Texas water wars. That might get heated. I didn't know water was going to be more bloody than oil, but it seems like it might get that way. So thank y'all for coming, and anyway, it's excited to stick around. Bye, everybody. Appreciate it again, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Did you guys like that one? How was it? This is my first YouTube first YouTube stream also, which is pretty crazy. I think it went pretty okay. I think I'm gonna try to do more debate stuff here, especially if it's earlier in the day. I don't really know how it works. It was kind of quiet, but I don't mind. It'll get better the more we do it. So thank you all. I don't like the delay. There's a delay? Where was the delay? Well, anyway. That's gonna be it for me. I'll probably be on tonight. Though to be honest, I am out of my meds. Um yeah, Seamus is like a very yeah, offensive character for sure. The Italian guy was a dumbass. I liked his accent though. It was fun to listen to him speak. He was rolling them R's like crazy. Crazy. Uh no, Hurricane Perro, I knew who Andrew Wilson was. It was fine. I feel like people think that I was a lot more fucked up by the situation than I was. The worst that I've suffered personally was irritation. Um, and also some asshole reposted the debate online doing a critique or like a debate class, and all he does is he says, "Wow, this girl, she's about to cry. She's about to cry right now. This girl, you can see her worldview is just being sorry, he's like Danish or something. Her worldview is just being destroyed right now. You can see her being crushed. This stupid feminist." Like, I was like, wow. I wasn't crying. I wasn't mad. It's just like, I was annoyed. There's a pretty significant chat delay. What the freak? There should be a chat delay on. How bad is it? Tell me, when I snap, put 1 in the chat. Okay, so there's like a 20-second delay. That's no good. It only has that energy for women and feminine men. That's what it comes down to. Oh, of course it does. But Hurricane Perro, listen. Listen. Oh, the snap is, I guess, maybe a lot later. So I have dealt with much more evil and shitty people on the internet and debated them before. Like, it wasn't that bad. He was just annoying. Like, I found the experience to be annoying, and I found him to be a little bit intellectually dishonest and unwilling to engage with my actual arguments, or to, you know, really defend his properly. And also I'm tired of his fans bothering me. Like, don't they have jobs or wives or something? Anyway, so the stream is over now. I will see you all tonight on Twitch, twitch.tv/enemycharlie. I'll probably play some World of Warcraft, to be honest. Goodbye. 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 Oh, there will be another stream at 3 p.m. PST tomorrow. So I should set that up. I should put that as something that's going to happen. So 3 p.m. PST tomorrow, I will be debating if Me Too went too far on Wik, on a Wik panel. All right. Bye, everyone. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.